Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services. Again, I'll remind our members to please unmute your microphone or mute your microphone as appropriate, and please turn on your camera. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, Assemblywoman Black, Assemblywoman Gorlow,
here.
Assemblyman Haven,
Here.
Assemblywoman Krasner,
Here, hello.
Assemblyman Matthews,
Here.
Assemblyman Orentlicker,
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong,
Here.
Assemblywoman Thomas,
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Here. Chair
Wynn.
Here. Let's get started. Welcome to our audience joining us for this virtual hearing of Health and Human Services. Oh, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. If we can just mark Assemblywoman Black absent excused, and I see that we are missing Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, and please mark her present when she arrives. I know she was running a little bit late. And with that, we will get started. We have two bill hearings this afternoon. I've allocated equal time and testimony for support, opposition, neutral after the bill introduction. And we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 273. This bill revises provisions relating to the Mental Health Consortia for Children. Assemblywoman Gorlow, I know you got two on deck today, so we will begin the hearing on Assembly Bill 273. Begin when you're ready.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Michelle Gorlow, representing Assembly District 35 in Clark County. I'm pleased to be here today to present Assembly Bill 273 for your consideration. I'm also joined by Dan Musgrove, Chair of the Clark County Children's Mental Health Consortium, and Shar Frost, Chair of the Clark County Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board, who can further explain the needs for this bill and answer any technical questions about consortia activities. So Assembly Bill 273 would formally create a statewide mental health consortium for the purpose of unifying regional health consortiums and authorize additional powers for each consortium. A little background. During the 2001 special session, the legislature approved Assembly Bill 1, which created 3 regional mental health consortiums designed to study the mental health needs of children in Nevada. The provisions of the bill establish a consortium for Clark County, Washoe County, and a single rural consortium to preside over all other counties. Pursuant to NRS 433B.335, each consortium develops a long-term strategic plan to deal with children's emotional and mental health needs every 10 years. Consortia are also responsible for updating their long-term plans and providing the director of HHS with policy priority biannually. For a number of years, an informal statewide mental health consortium has existed to foster collaboration between the regional entities. AB 273 seeks to officially codify the organization in NRS for the purpose of dealing with an unprecedented crisis in young mental health. So we're all aware of the surge in mental illness brought on by the COVID pandemic. Our children and young adult populations have been hit particularly hard with the closure of in-person education and widespread social isolation. The startling number of teen suicides in this state over the last year has tragically demonstrated the profound need to expand mental health services. Nevada has an especially poor track record on this issue. Mental Health American's 2021 statistics ranks Nevada 51st in at-risk youth. In other words, we proportionally have the highest rate of youth mental illness and the lowest rate of access to care. Now, AB 273 isn't going to solve this crisis, but it will bring together important actors in the mental health arena to fill in healthcare gaps and present a unified effort to tackle our state's youth mental health epidemic. If you go to Section 2 of the bill, you'll find the sprawling cast of members who will make up the proposed statewide consortium. It includes policy officials representing the Departments of Health, Education, Family Services, regional consortium members, and the parents of emotionally unwell children. Section 4 establishes the duty of the state consortium. Namely, it authorizes the statewide consortium to represent its members' entities in an official capacity. It also allows the state consortium to evaluate the efficiency of treatments and proposed policy recommendations. Sections 1, 3, and 5 of the bill specify that only regional mental health consortia are required to submit a long-term strategic plan and make necessary conforming changes. Finally, Section 6 grants each consortium the ability to request one bill draft for each regular legislative session, and Section 7 places this update in NRS. So AB 273 empowers our mental health consortiums throughout the state and gives them the tools to make corrective changes to the quality of care for mental illness. I will now hand the presentation over to Dan Musgrove and Shar Frost to make additional comments on the bill before turning it to the committee for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Gorlow. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Dan Musgrove with the Clark County Children's Mental Health Consortium. That's DAN, capital MUSGROVE. I want to, again, thank all of you for the opportunity to talk to you. I've been in front of your committee before when we had the opportunity to kind of brief you on what the consortiums do. And I think what Assemblywoman Gorlow talked about is absolutely essential in making sure that we all as regional consortiums have the chance to work and collaborate together. And while many of the issues that we have are unique to the different regions that we have, there are so many other issues that we are absolutely in sync upon. And it's always good for us to work together. And especially when it comes to advocating on behalf of children in our state. And the best way that I can put it is, we kind of act as fiduciaries. The definition of a fiduciary is someone who acts in the best interests of others. They kind of remove the hat that they come from. They work on a daily basis and they focus on what's in the best interest of children. And that's what's been so great about the consortiums is that we have folks from the state, we have folks from the county, we have folks from the school district, we have parents, we have a person like myself who comes from the business industry, who get together, take off those hats from the different agencies that we represent, and just focus on what is right for our kids. And as the Assemblywoman said, we have a crisis, and it's not new to us for those that have been working on the consortiums. I mean, former Speaker Barbara Buckley was so ahead of her time when she created the consortiums back in 2001. And again, we just want to make sure that the state consortium can exist by statute, because again, it's just been an informal group. And in working with DCFS at the state level and others, they realized the importance of the consortium, especially the statewide consortium, as we work with them, as they try to work on programs that are in the best interest of kids. And again, it's just important that we put it in statute and make sure that it exists, and also that the membership that was created in 2001 to bring together all those folks from different entities exists at the statewide level as well. And I also want to just put on the record that we've been in consultation with Clark County, and Clark County plays a very important role in our regional Clark consortium. But we're going to make sure that Clark, as the bill specifies, each consortium will get the option of putting 3 members on the statewide consortium. We're committing to Clark County to make sure that one of our 3 is a Clark County representative, because it's crucial that they have the opportunity to work across the state and work with people at the regional and state level. And so we make that commitment that we're going to put that in our bylaws. So I'm open to any questions, and I thank you again for the opportunity to testify on this Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Musgrove. Assemblywoman Gorlow, do we also have Ms. Frost to testify, or is she there for presentation or support?
I believe she's also here to testify.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Shar Frost, CharFrost, and I am here today representing the Clark Regional Behavioral Health Policy Board, of which I am the chair, but I also have the privilege of serving as a parent representative on both the Clark County Children's Mental Health Consortium as well as the Nevada Behavioral Health Consortium. And when Mr. Musgrove talks about collaboration. We very closely on our policy board collaborate with the Children's Mental Health Consortium because, quite frankly, some of us sit on both. And because the issues are so broad in mental health, it's really just one of those really great relationships to have somebody who's focusing on children. So I'm here to support it. And I also want to also mention that in the course of writing the language for this bill, not only did we work with the state consortium, but we also took the bill to each of the regional consortiums, and they each unanimously supported the bill as you see it today. So we're very excited that we're able to have these great relationships within the state and hope that this state consortium can continue doing the work it's already doing in a more formal, codified way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frost. Assemblywoman Gorlow, do you have any other presenters?
I do not. We are ready for questions.
Wonderful. I have Vice Chair Peters. She has a question, and I also have Assemblywoman Titus. And if there are any other members that might have questions, if you can send me a Skype, that would be great. Go ahead, Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Chair. I was just hoping you could give us a little more discussion on how you decided on the type of membership for the consortia. Particularly interested in the ex officio administrator or deputy administrator rather than or designated representative, and then how you decided on specifying the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy, because it appears that they may also be represented on the regional consortia. So, so the justification there, and any other information you think is supportive of the decisions on these members.
Thank you, Vice Chair Peters. For record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow. To you through Chair Wynn, if we could have Dan Musgrove answer that question, I think he would answer it the best. Thank you.
And feel free to go directly to the member asking the question, Mr. Musgrove.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In answer to that question, one of the first things we wanted to do was make sure that the board was of a size that was workable. As you can see by the membership on the regional consortiums, there's a lot of folks that are represented. And we tried to mimic that at the statewide consortium because we just want, especially when it comes to, someone from the state, again, DCFS, and then also Medicaid, it's important that when we work together with the three regional consortiums, that they are in fact hearing that information that's coming statewide, because sometimes, like, we have a person in the Clark office, the Clark Consortium that comes from Southern Nevada. And it's the same way with the Washoe or the regional one. They have representatives who work in those areas. And so we wanted to make sure that, again, we're speaking and bringing information that comes from those areas, but when we have someone on the statewide consortium, we're speaking to someone that's at a level that can kind of, look at the whole state, and it is not just regionally kind of, centric. And so I'm hoping I got all that, and I think it's the other thing is each of the consortiums will want to make sure that there is probably a unique voice as their representatives. And we also, of course, want to make sure that parents are involved because they are the ones that truly, experience firsthand what it's like to have one of their children or multiple children who are affected by behavioral health issues. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. That is helpful. I think the only one that I missed, and it may have been because I was thinking while you were talking, was on the ex officio and why designating the deputy administrator versus just generalizing as a representative.
Again, I'm pretty sure, we want to make sure it's someone that can attend the meetings. And obviously, I think, having someone at the director level may not be able to, have the time. And again, for us, it's all about participation. We want folks that are committed to this process and belief in our kids and have the time and effort, because believe me, this is all, for most of us, this is all volunteer work. This is stuff that we do outside of our regular jobs. And believe me, it is a huge time commitment. I mean, at the Clark Consortium, we have 2 meetings a month that usually last 2 or more hours. And then the statewide consortium meets usually either bi-monthly or quarterly. And again, that's usually a 2 to 3 hour meeting. So, and that doesn't even count all the work that you do in preparation for those subcommittees and stuff. And I think, we wanted to make sure that we chose people, and this was in consultation with those agencies as to who they thought might be the best representative to sit on the statewide consortium. And if I've missed anything, I'd ask Shar Frost to fill in the gaps.
I think you got it, Dan. This is Shar Frost for the record. We spent a lot of time thinking about who would be the best fit. As far as the administrator, we really thought that by making it an ex officio, it gave them a little more latitude to send, if, for example, the deputy administrator of DCFS can't attend, he can designate somebody else. And we really felt it gave that kind of latitude to DCFS, while bearing in mind that they do have a voting member from DCFS on that list as well. So for voting members, we wanted to make sure that there was some consistency.
Okay, I just want to be clear, because I don't read it as the administrator may designate a deputy administrator of the division to attend any meeting. I don't read that as or other designee. So if the intention is to give them some latitude on ensuring someone is at the meeting at a minimum, I just would review that and make sure that language matches the intention. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, I have a question from Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Gurlow, for bringing this bill forward. Certainly, the mental health of all of Nevadans is a huge issue. I serve, as I think Ms. Frost does, on one of the regional behavioral healthcare policy boards, and I'm wondering if this is a slight duplication of some of the stuff that these regional healthcare policy boards are doing. Can you clarify that this is kind of a unique position? I think, Mr. Musgrove, you serve on it also, and one in Clark County. And so, again, is this duplication? Are we spreading our resources out when we really need to be kind of consolidating them so that we're all communicating together? Could you explain maybe what this adds to that as opposed to duplication? And then I have a follow-up if I might, Madam Chair.
Dan Musgrove, I appreciate that question, because it would appear that way. But one of the things that we have done, especially at the regional policy board level, at least I know for sure at the Washoe and the Clark level, and I believe perhaps at the rural as well, is especially in the Clark, we have kind of designated the work on children's mental health to the consortium. So because we know that they've been working so very, very hard for many, many years on these issues. And so that way there aren't those duplicate efforts. And one of the things that we tried to do is make sure that there were, especially Clark and Washoe, that there were representatives from the consortia to sit on the regional policy board as well. So there's myself, there's Shar Frost, we have Jackie Harris. All three of us serve in both capacities. So then we have the ability to both be focusing on adult issues, but also bring in the work that the consortiums do and make sure that the regional policy boards aren't operating in a vacuum. They hear those issues. We're advocates on both. And again, that way we think that there isn't the duplication. We've got everybody working in their separate spheres of influence, but then coming together and bringing that information together.
Thank you for that answer. Follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
This may, you mentioned serving on a couple of the consortium and the boards, and that brought up another question for me, because I've had constituents that have wanted to serve on more than one board. And I guess a consortium, this isn't a governor appointed board, so you can serve on more than one board, because currently in statute, and legal can clarify this for us, please, that you can only serve on one appointed board at a time. You cannot serve on more than one appointed board. So is this consortium not considered that? Would this not be a conflict then? Because I've got a legal opinion from our staff on this other appointment that I was trying to do, who already served on another board, that they couldn't serve on more than one board at a time. So does a consortium not fall under that?
Madam Chair, Dan Musgrove, excellent question. The way I know that the consortium is set up is that it goes through the administrator of DCFS. So DCFS has to approve every nomination that comes from the board, and then that administrator actually is the one who makes the official designation. And then, as you know, that on the regional policy boards, a number of those positions are appointed by different folks. The governor gets a couple, the legislature gets a couple, but I would have to yield to legal counsel for that interpretation. Looks like I might be getting kicked off a board here. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Assemblywoman.
Oh, I was just going to say, I appreciate that, because I wouldn't have thought anything of it, except that I tried to appoint this poor person that's on our board, behavioral health policy, to another board. As we know, we have difficulty getting people to volunteer. So people who are already engaged, great. But we were told we couldn't because there's a bill to fix that. There is a bill that NACO is bringing forward that we shouldn't address another bill, but there is a bill to fix that, because we've run into this before, that people that are trained, people that are volunteering, people who want to serve, there's a limit to that. And so NACO, according to at least I think it's out there somewhere, NACO's bill is coming forward. So to fix it, but right now I'm just question mark. And the question might be that this is the answer might be that this is a consortium not appointed by the governor. So there's where the restriction is. And if our legal is available at some point, we could get some clarity on it. But I know they're all busy, so.
Rochelle Wynn here. Assemblywoman Titus, I do believe there is a bill floating around that is being brought by NACO. I don't know if it has been heard yet, but I have heard that same thing. We had some of the same problems on several other interim committees that I served on, where we had to have people get off of the committees and other people had to get on because of that same problem. So I would encourage Assemblywoman Gorlow and the rest of your team here to contact legal at the conclusion of this hearing to see if we can get some clarification on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Then next we have Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Of course, you just put something in her mouth. I'm sorry. Do you want me to come back to you in a second? Do we have any other questions from committee members?
I'm ready.
Okay. Sorry, bad timing. And I appreciate you guys getting on right after adjournment of floor, so I know people are snacking. So.
Thank you. No, my question was kind of in the same vein, but a little bit differently, as someone who had to work with the getting the appointments in on the regional behavioral health board, and then the reappointments, it became really hard to fill some of those spots because they were so specifically written. And, to echo what Mr. Musgrove says, there's a dedicated core of people who speak this truth and work in this field all the time, but it does tend to be a dedicated core. And so I just want to make sure that in Section 2, when you're thinking about with, I think it's 9 members, you're not ending up in a place where you're inadvertently making it more onerous for certain types of people. So I think I was looking at, it looks like there's a total of 6 members coming from the regional consortia onto the national consortia board, 3 from the local consortia, and then 3 parents of children. And so depending on, I guess, how often people are meeting or how frequently they're meeting, I just wanted to make sure they're you weren't inadvertently building a structure by which you've got the majority of your board 6 members who this might be the 3rd meeting that they have in a month, and if they don't attend, or if it becomes too much in terms of attendance, that you don't end up in a space where you don't have a quorum. And so that's just what I was thinking of, just food for thought. I don't need a response on it, just kind of food for thought. The one thing I did kind of want to make sure that we do get flushed out in the legislative record is, so it goes in and talks about one of the board duties being recommendations and approving plans that could prevent placement of children. And I guess I want to know more about what the intent is on that word approve.
If I may, Madam Chair, Dan Musgrove, and that question was also brought up to us by Clark County, and I can assure you that it really falls into that discussion I had about being a fiduciary. I think that there isn't any doubt that we are very strong and passionate advocates when it comes to children, and there are times when we disagree with perhaps the direction that an agency might be taking. And so it won't certainly be a blanket approval. I think what it will be is, as we advocate on behalf of these children, and those of you who have sat on interim committees have seen me before when I have kind of brought the priorities of the 3 consortium to interim health, or the juvenile justice hearing, or even education. We bring those priorities from all 3 consortiums to the legislature to make sure that as you begin a session, you're aware of those priorities. And sometimes they don't always fall in sync with perhaps that which the state has already approved. And so it really is just an opportunity for us to be a part of that decision making and make sure that they understand where the consortiums are coming from. And so that's what we kind of saw as our approval. It doesn't mean we necessarily will approve it. It just means that we're going to take the opportunity to give them a pretty solid recommendation, and that we will be passionate in our advocacy as to whatever our recommendation might have been, whether it's in sync with that agency or not in sync.
If I could follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
And I appreciate that. And I think that role of kind of having a dissenting voice on public policy is very important. We know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in this area. I guess I'm wondering, and we might want to get more clarification from legal, if we as a legislature approve the statute with the word approve in there, how that might be interpreted, that when you've got a board, especially that has 3 members on there from state government, Medicaid, education, and DCFS, that, if you've got a dissenting vote where those 3 folks might vote to support a state measure because they are agents of the state, and then you've got 6 votes who don't, then the board representation would be for a no, and then how much weight that no would carry in terms of effect of whether or not a policy would go through the state. So I'm just wondering if recommendation alone covers that, and that I wouldn't want the unintended consequence to be that actually, if the board voted something down, that it would prevent the state from taking an action versus just having a record that you are in opposition to that action. Do you get what I mean?
Absolutely, Madam Chair, Dan Musgrove. That is an excellent point. And I still think that perhaps in the statute I'd have to review, we still are advisory only. But again, I think that's probably a very good question to ask of legal, because I think you're right. We certainly shouldn't be in the position potentially of delaying any kind of important state program that's already been approved by this legislature, for instance, to go forward. So I know that you're not giving us that much authority. But
I know you would ask for it. And I know if you got it, you wouldn't give it away. Right. Neither would I. So that's why I think we could just, Madam Chair, just make sure we've got that, I guess, either intent right or that word right, so that we don't inadvertently set ourselves all up for a place where it could be kind of magical, but then actually could be more problematic than what we think. So we don't want to have to come back and just strike that section out. So I appreciate that, Mr. Musgrove.
No, we're definitely taking some notes. I see Assemblywoman Gorlow there jotting down some things that I'm sure she will follow up with legal to make sure that our intent and there aren't those unintended consequences. Oh, and I said one of those buzzwords. I hate that. Anyway, seeing no other questions from the members, I think we will begin testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of Assembly Bill 273. I will remind callers, please clearly state and spell your name for the record, and please limit your testimony to 2 minutes. Staff will be timing each member to ensure we're given a fair opportunity to speak. And broadcast services, if we could go to and begin support testimony of Assembly Bill 273.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 273, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there was nobody in support at this time.
Do we have any callers in neutral? I meant in opposition to 273.
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 273, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral. In opposition at this time.
It was my fault. It's the end of the week. Do we have any callers in neutral? I think I know the answer, but just to double check.
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 273, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral this time.
Thank you. At this time, I will turn it back to Assemblywoman Gorlow if you have any closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, an official statewide mental consortium is long overdue. It's time to unify the regional bodies and empower them to affect change. I want to take a moment and thank both Dan Musgrove and Shar Frost for being here today and testifying on this. And I look forward to working with the committee and legal and looking at some of the changes that need to be made. So thank you very much.
And thank you for that presentation. At this time, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 273, and I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 283, which requires certain retail establishments to allow persons with certain medical conditions access to employee restrooms. Again, I will welcome Assemblywoman Gorlow back to the virtual table, and please begin when you are ready.
Thank you again, Chair Wynn. Again, my name is Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, representing Assembly District 35 in Clark County. I am pleased to be here today to present Assembly Bill 283 for your consideration. Assembly Bill 283 requires certain retail establishments to provide restroom access to persons with digestive conditions and subjects bad actors to civil penalties. In advance of any bill description, I will forewarn the community that parts of the bill are in the process of being workshopped with stakeholders, so there will be changes coming up. So the background and the problem for this legislation, to start with, I had received a phone call from one of my constituents who brought this problem to my attention and thought it was a great bill to bring forward. It pushes to expand bathroom access in over 15-year. Sorry, let me go. Back in 2005, there was a 15-year-old girl. Her name was Allie, and she was denied access to a retailer employee's restroom during a Crohn's disease flare-up. The retail refusal to accommodate Allie's medical emergency led to an accident in the middle of the store. So after that, Allie and her mother lobbied an Illinois state representative to introduce a restroom access bill that has become known as Allie's Law. The Illinois state legislature unanimously passed Allie's Law, which is the same intent and nearly identical in form to the bill that is before you today. Allie is not alone in dealing with the struggles of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. The CDC estimates that more than 3 million Americans have an irritable bowel condition, and the Ulcerative Colitis Association projects that as many as 700,000 Americans receive an IBD diagnosis annually. Folks with these conditions deserve peace of mind. They deserve to know that a bathroom is never too far out of reach when an attack occurs. The bulk of AB 283 is contained within Section 1 of the bill. Section 1, subsection 1 establishes 4 conditions under which retailers with an employee bathroom must provide access to eligible persons during regular business hours. The customer must provide proof in writing of their condition. This includes a copied statement signed by the customer's healthcare professional attesting to their condition, or an identification card issued by a health-related nonprofit. Condition 2, 3 or more employees must be present and working at the time of the request. Condition 3, the retailer does not have a public restroom. And condition 4, access to the retailer's bathroom must be reasonably safe or not pose a security risk to the retailer. Subsection 2 says the civil liability exemptions for retailers that deny or approve bathroom access. As per the bill, retailers are exempt from liability if they are not willfully negligent, restroom access occurs in an area not accessible to the public, or the customer gets injured. Currently, we are in discussion with stakeholders on both sides of this issue to amend subsection 2's liability provisions so that it doesn't embolden businesses to deny access, but at the same time doesn't leave them without reasonable protections. Subsection 3 of the bill establishes a civil penalty of not more than $100 for an employee or retailer that violates subsection 1. And finally, subsection 4 defines terms. The two most significant definitions as they relate to the scope of the bill are eligible medical conditions and retail establishments. Eligible medical conditions would include Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, I can't say that, colitis, irritable and inflammatory bowel disorders, and conditions requiring the use of an ostomy device. I'm having trouble talking today. It's Friday, sorry. And any other permanent or temporary medical condition that necessitates bathroom access, for example, pregnancy. As it stands, the definition of retail establishment is broad. It includes any business place offering a good or service. However, again, we are working with Commerce Chambers and the Nevada Retail Association to refine the scope of qualifying retail establishments. The spirit of AB 283 is to guarantee bathroom access to people with medical disabilities. And fundamentally, it's about dignity. People with Crohn's disease and the like should have a plan out. They should not have to plan out their lives based on the nearest public restroom. I am available to answer any questions, but I would like to turn this over to Alex, who will like to share a personal story, and Jennifer Campbell, Executive Director of the Nevada Chapter of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to my testimony. My name is Alex Cimo, last name C-I-M-O, and I want you all to just take a moment to reflect back on a time in your life where you felt especially vulnerable, maybe the most vulnerable. When you reflect back on that, how did you feel in that moment? Did you feel helpless, alone, embarrassed, mortified even? What about defeated? Now, as you continue to reflect back on that memory and ask yourself, is there anything I could have done to change that outcome? As someone who has suffered from ulcerative colitis for over the past 10 years of my life, this is just one of many questions that I, as well as many others who suffer from inflammatory bowel diseases, constantly ask ourselves as we live our lives on a daily basis. Where's the closest restroom? Does this business even have a restroom? What's the quickest way for me to get to the restroom in case I suddenly feel the urge to use it? What if I'm driving and I have to make an abrupt stop and find a way to relieve myself? Will the businesses in the area of town that I'm driving through even have public restroom access? What if I'm presenting testimony in the middle of presenting to the Nevada Legislature and have to suddenly excuse myself? These are all things that run through our mind on a daily basis, and our lives are conformed around that mentality. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with ulcerative colitis or maybe Crohn's disease, these are two disorders that are classified under the umbrella term of inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. IBDs are disorders that involve chronic inflammation of the digestive tract, resulting in symptoms such as chronic diarrhea, fatigue, abdominal pain and cramping, and most salient to this testimony, uncontrollable bowel movements. Depending on the severity of the condition, these bowel movements can occur anywhere from 6 to 16 times per day, sometimes even more, depending on if there's a flare. What would you do if you were in a part of town and it has limited access to a public restroom? We've all been in that situation, right? We just hold it. You would either just wait until you get home and then you can use the restroom at your house, or you wait until you get into an area of town that does have more easy access to a public restroom. Well, people with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease can't hold it, and if we can, it's for a very short period of time. The physical stress is already severe enough, but the mental stress that comes along with it is another battle entirely. Our disease dictates our life decisions, and the amount of dates, family gatherings, and life celebrations I've had to miss out on as a result of my ulcerative colitis is unfathomable. Because in the back of my mind, there's always that lingering question, what if there isn't access to a restroom? One time I was with a friend at a record store and felt the urge to use the restroom. This record store was located within a part of town that had very limited access to public restrooms, and the signs displayed all throughout the store made it abundantly clear that I would need to seek a restroom elsewhere. This record store was located in a strip mall with several other small businesses, and as I squirmed from one business to the next, trying my best to remain calm, each one had signage in their front window saying, "No public restroom." I was panicking. Am I going to make it? Soon enough, the inevitable happened, and I soiled myself in public. I eventually made my way over to a fast food restaurant that was across a major public road and was granted access to the restroom to begin cleaning myself up. Fortunately, I was out with a friend, and after notifying him about what had happened, I had him retrieve a backpack that I always keep in my car, packed with cleaning wipes, a fresh change of clothes, and a note that says everything will be okay, just to help me remember that this too shall pass. One of the inadvertent side effects of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease is that you can't physically see our condition. You can't see what we're going through, what we're struggling with. Did you know that over 3 million Americans suffer from either ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease? And that's over 1% of the population. And if you're asking yourself, why is this the first time I'm hearing about this? It's because it's embarrassing. It's simple. No one wants to talk about all the times that they have to use the restroom in a day. No one wants to talk about the times that they've actually soiled themselves in public. And imagine if it was me 10 years ago when I first started having symptoms of ulcerative colitis. This is when I was in high school. Imagine what it's like for children or teenagers growing up to have to go to school enduring what we have to go through for anyone who has an irritable bowel disease. This did not have to happen to me, nor did it have to happen to Allie Bain, the young woman from Illinois for whom Allie's Law is named after. I walked past a total of 7 other businesses that had restrooms available, but they weren't publicly accessible, and the signs alone deterred me from even wanting to ask, regardless of my condition. To a business owner, I'm just another person trying to use the restroom when they're completely unaware of what I and the millions of other Americans who might be suffering from these diseases are actually going through. At this very moment, I actually carry in my wallet a urgent medical notice card that is from the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, which is a nonprofit. And hoping in emergency situations, I'm able to quickly obtain access to a public restroom where it may not be easy for me to do so. This card doesn't actually have any legal backing. It's really just more for peace of mind more than anything, because just carrying it, I know that I might be skewing probability slightly more in my favor that I might have access to a restroom where I might not otherwise. But that can change. I want to quickly acknowledge that there have been a handful of understanding business owners who have allowed me to use their non-public restrooms in my time of need, and I'm really grateful for each and every one of them as they've helped me narrowly avoid another embarrassing situation. The adoption of Allie's Law would provide myself, as well as hundreds, if not thousands of Nevadans, the tools to allow us to live more freely without fear. If you recall back to the beginning of my testimony, I had you ask yourselves, is there anything I could have done to change the outcome of a time where you personally felt especially vulnerable, helpless, alone, or embarrassed? And today, you all have the power to help change the outcome for Nevadans suffering from these incurable inflammatory bowel diseases and can help us provide a better way of life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony and sharing your personal experiences here today. I think it's very impactful. Assemblywoman Gorlow, do you have any other presenters today?
Yes, I believe, and make sure my mute was off, sorry. Thank you, Chair Wynn. I believe we have Jennifer Campbell from the Nevada chapter of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I'd remind you to state your name for the record before you speak.
Certainly. My name is Jennifer Campbell, JenniferCampbell, and I am the Executive Director of the Nevada chapter of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. First, I'd like to thank you, Chair Wynn, Vice President Peters, and honorable members of the committee for your time and consideration in this important issue. I'd also like to thank Alex for his testimony. He is certainly not alone in his experience, and he really summed up anything I think that I could have said in further support One thing I do want to mention is that there are approximately 31,000 Nevadans that suffer from Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And as Alex mentioned, there is no cure for this disease, and it's something that a patient will live with for the rest of their life. Or I should say that IBD does, as Alex mentioned, cause many patients to worry about whether or not they'll have access to a restroom when they're in public. And it absolutely changes how they are able to go about their daily lives. And in fact, about a year ago, when our pandemic began and we all were asked to stay at home, I was speaking to a patient who is one of our support group leaders. And she said, oh, heck, I've been training for this for the last 15 years. Once I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I don't like leaving my house because I never know when I'm going to need access to a restroom and I won't have it. So it's absolutely something that our patients need to deal with every single day. The card that Alex mentioned is, we casually call it the I Can't Wait card. And they are cards that we make available to Crohn's or ulcerative colitis patients in an effort to empower them, to give them a tool so that they can say, I have a disease and I need help right away. And to, like he said, many establishments credit, that sometimes is enough, but sometimes it's not. And without that card and with those signs in the windows, it can feel really defeating for a patient to not have the opportunity to use the facility as they need to. So we at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation are in full support of Assembly Bill 283. And hopefully we can seek a time where patients do have increased access to restrooms. And I want to thank all of you for your time and consideration of this bill. And we ask that we move to, or that you all will move to move the bill out of the committee. And thank you all very much.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Gorlow, do you have any other? I think you may have another presenter. Is that correct or no?
No, that should be our last presenter.
Okay.
We're available for questions.
Perfect. I do have some questions. I'm going to start with Assemblyman Matthews.
Thank you, Chair Wynn. Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow, for presenting the bill. Thank you also, Mr. Simo and Ms. Campbell, for your testimony. Just as a point of clarification, would this apply to, under the definition of customers, those who are already in the retail establishment, as a customer, either to purchase something or for other purposes, or would this apply to those who would be coming into the establishment solely for the purpose of using the restroom? Based on the testimony, it sounds like the intent is the latter, but I just was hoping to get that as a point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Matthews. For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, to you through Chair Wynn. Yes, the intent is that anyone coming into an establishment that may need to use a bathroom does not necessarily need to buy a stick of gum to do so, that they can use the bathroom. So thank you for the question.
So just as a quick follow-up then, if I may, Madam Chair.
Sorry, go ahead, Assemblyman Matthews.
So then, and thank you for that, Assemblywoman. And so it would then be unlawful, for example, the business owner to make purchasing something a condition of using the restroom. That would be the intent.
Again, for the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, yes, that is the intent, that anyone who may need to use the bathroom, as Mr. Simo had stated, he was going down a strip mall, continually finding that he could not use any of the restrooms. And so the intent is that someone could come in, use that card, and use the bathroom. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think we also have a question here from Assemblywoman Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow, for bringing the bill, and especially thank you for the testimony on the need. I won't use a pun but I will actually use on the urgency of bringing this bill forward. I have several questions, actually. First, there are many medical conditions, and in my many years as a doc, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of folks with irritable bowel disease, diagnosed them, ulcerative colitis, et cetera, treated them, referred them, and all of the above. And I understand that sense of urgency. But the need, the urgency to use a restroom is far greater than that scope of disease, and wondered why you just focused on that, and things like folks that may have urge incontinence, men who have prostate cancer who have surgery may become incontinent and feel, or when they feel they have to use a restroom, they need to immediately use a restroom. Women who on bladder medications, those of us who've had children, and certainly after that, your bladder control may not be as good. And when you feel you got to go, you got to go. So I'm just wondering, are there any other states that expand the definition? Is there only one state that has passed this specifically to ulcerative colitis? There's no one out there representing those with bladder issues, and I'll have a follow-up afterwards, Madam Chair. Okay.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Titus. For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, and to you through Chair Wynn. Those are excellent questions. Currently, there are 16 states that have Allie's Law on the book, and we used a lot of their verbiage in our verbiage as well. They all stuck mostly with ulcerative colitis. However, we are very open to expanding and had discussed other medical conditions, because we know that there are a lot more people with, like you mentioned, cancer, bladder incontinency, that they could also fall under this. And so we are open to expanding to other conditions as well.
Thank you. Another question, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I have concerns regarding, again, your intent is good, but I have concerns sometimes the unintended consequences of bills such as this. And that is the poor little clerk in the store whose boss has said, you can't let people in here use our restroom. And then that clerk now, it says a retail establishment, this is on section, I guess it's just section 1, number 3, and that fine. It's a retail establishment or an employee who does not let somebody use this, they can be fined. So how do you propose to educate, and what will the cost be? I see there's no fee on state or county listed here, on local government or state, but how do you propose educating Nevada businesses, especially the small businesses, because that's who this is going to affect. The large businesses, the shopping malls have restrooms there. It's that little business, that little mom and pop shop, that little tire store, that little dress shop, that little business that doesn't allow people to use their restroom. How are you going to educate them if this does become in the past? How will you go about educating them? Who will be responsible for that? Will our Secretary of State and the Business License Department know? How will this be held without some sort of cost?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Titus. To you through Chair Wynn, and for the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow. In the instance that you mentioned that there's one employee at the store and the boss has said nobody can use the restroom, absolutely not. First off, that person would not be, required to allow bathroom access because there would only be one employee. We do have to have 3 or more, and that is also for the store security as well. So if it's just one employee, then they are not required by this legislation to allow the bathroom. However, if there were 3 or more employees, they would have to. And if they didn't, then it would be up to the consumer to make a complaint about about not allowing them to use it. As for the education, that is still something we are looking into, whether it would be something like the business license people saying, hey, here are the changes, the retail association helping us with that education as well. Because I do agree there needs to be an education component so they understand who can use the bathroom and in what conditions as well.
And I thank you for that, because I have significant concerns that we pass laws and now we're going to find somebody and they have not a clue on what this is all about. And for them then to, this poor little 18-year-old challenging, well, show, no, you can't use it. My boss will fire me if you use it. And then, no, I have, this card. And that's my next question then. Will there be new cards from, will you go then to your provider and have to have some sort of card? Will the provider have to provide that, or will they bring in card from, say, the Colitis Foundation or whatever? How will that process work? I know you have those cards already, but does everybody belong to that foundation? I can tell you I have patients who don't share that with everybody and don't necessarily belong to that foundation.
Thank you for the question again, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow. For the record, the Colitis Foundation does have those cards, and I will have Jennifer Campbell speak a little bit more about the process and how you can get them there. But in many of the other states, even just a quick letter from a doctor stating that you have a medical condition has been sufficient in the other states.
Okay, so we already have that. One last question, if I might, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I'm going on here. But I'd like to kind of vet this out as much as possible. So we already have health laws. We already have safety regulations, especially for restaurants. Does this then change that? Does it preempt existing rules and regulations?
For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, I will need to talk to legal about that. I don't anticipate that this would. Most of your restaurants do have bathrooms already. However, we are working with the Retail Association for some of those smaller ones that might just be more of a takeout type of location. In our discussions, we kept thinking of pizza places. There's several pizza places that are small, mostly takeout locations. And so we are working with them on possibly carving out some exemptions for some of those smaller ones. In some of the other states, they exempted restaurants based on size. I personally have no concept of what square footage looks like. So I don't think that's the route we will go, but we are working with them and so we can come to a compromise.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your answers. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me all those questions.
No, and I believe you actually asked several questions that came from some of our other members, including Assemblywoman Peters and some others. So I'm glad that you were able to ask them, and we're going to get those on the record. Do I have any other questions from members before I take testimony in support, opposition, and neutral? Oh, I see Vice Chair Peters has another question. Go ahead.
It's not really a question. I just want the co-presenters to know that I'm grateful that you shared your story and are normalizing some of these conversations. I know that when I was pregnant, I had a couple of very embarrassing, like morning sickness all day long scenarios where I had to go home and change. I had to just bail on my business meeting or my, client dinner or my day job to go and take care of myself because things just change and not everybody has the ability to make it to a restroom every time something comes on. So I applaud you for sharing your story and normalizing the difference in our bodies. And thank you for bringing the bill and being so thoughtful about sharing that stuff.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Peters. Any other questions or statements from the committee members? Seeing none, I will go to Broadcast Services to get ready to hear testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of Assembly Bill 283. Again, I will remind callers to clearly state your name and spell your name for the record and limit your testimony to 2 minutes. Staff will be timing each speaker to ensure everyone is given a fair opportunity to speak. And we will begin testimony in support of Assembly Bill 283.
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 283, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have nobody in support at this time.
Thank you. And do we have any callers in opposition to the bill? And if we can we start with them?
Of course. To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 283, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Would the caller with the last 3 digits, 387, please press star, or please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. This is Leonard Stone. I'm a lawyer in Southern Nevada. I'm here today on behalf of the Nevada Justice Association. Thank you so much for giving me a moment to speak about this bill. First of all, I have to tell you I'm initially certainly uncomfortable even being in the category of opposition, because in most ways we are very, very supportive and applaud the compassionate efforts of this bill to protect a vulnerable population suffering from these life-altering medical conditions. I think we heard some excellent comments today about the probable need to broaden the definitions of those medical conditions. I appreciated, for example, a moment ago, the discussion for how pregnancy can lead to these senses of urgency. So that would be one thing to consider. Generally speaking, however, we have no opposition to Section 1 because we think this is a generally good bill with a very, very good meaning. But we strongly oppose Section 2, which provides immunity to businesses unless they are willfully or grossly negligent. The reason why we oppose this portion of the bill is it lowers the standard of care for this vulnerable population. The law is quite clear regarding a landowner or lessee's obligations relative to the safety of land. Don't be negligent. Be reasonable. Provide reasonably safe space. Basic negligence, in other words, reasonable conduct, does not necessitate willful or grossly negligent conduct in order to be held accountable. We should not be sending a message, and we certainly should not be passing a law that tells businesses they can relax on safety. Presumably, they already care about their own employees who are using the space. Business owners and operators already have an obligation to maintain safe space. They should be equally, if not more, concerned about these vulnerable individuals. Simply put, by raising the standard to willful and grossly negligent conduct, we are not adequately incentivizing these businesses to keep people safe. So on the one hand, a great bill. We should be protecting people. On the other hand, in exchange for that, for this obligation that we should have, which is compassion and empathy, it shouldn't be in exchange for changing the standard of care and allowing spaces to be less safe. Thank you so much for this time to speak.
Thank you for your testimony in opposition. If we can go to our next caller in opposition.
The caller with the last 3 digits, 969, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Brian Wachter, BryanWachter, with the Retail Association of Nevada. I do want to appreciate Assemblywoman Garlow for bringing the bill forward and for working with us. We are in opposition to the bill as it is currently written, but we do have hope that we will be able to get to a place where that won't be true any longer. We do want to say that we are ready and able to provide some notification to retailers in the state, but we might consider allowing the first instance to be a warning, just so that business has adequate notice going forward. And we, of course, would oppose any changes to Section 2. And with that, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to working together with the Assemblywoman on some compromise language.
With the caller with the last 3 digits, 114, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. Hello, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Amber Stidham. That's AMBER STIDHAM, and I'm calling on behalf of the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. I too would very much like to thank Assemblywoman Gorlow for reaching out to our organization on this bill. We are committed to working together with the Assemblywoman to address some of our concerns and finding a way that we can work this out. However, today, as the bill is written, we are opposed. Thank you.
If we can go to our next caller in opposition.
The caller with the last three digits, 124, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moradkan, Moradkhan with the Vegas Chamber. First, I would like to thank the bill sponsor for meeting with the Chamber about the bill. Those conversations, I do believe, were productive. We do understand the policy need at hand and sympathetic to the issue. Our concerns with the bill are some technical components, as we have shared with the bill sponsor. For example, it's about the broadness of the retail definition as it relates to our members because of some security and public health care concerns for certain industry sectors within Nevada's business community. As we shared with the bill sponsor, we do believe there needs to be exemption for certain groups such as banks, credit unions, financial institutions, and they would not be included in the retail definition because of security concerns. We also have a concern for some of our smaller business restaurants that do not have a public access bathroom, and the customer would have to go through a food preparation area, which would be in violation or issue with local health district standards. And we appreciate the bill sponsor's willingness for us to help develop a solution to address those two sectors. We would have a concern about changes to Section 2. We believe if we are mandated to open up back of the house facility restrooms, that we should not lose protection for that for the public to come through those areas. We will, of course, continue to work with the bill sponsor, and it's our hope to quickly find a resolution to this bill, again, sympathetic to the policy issue at hand. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. If we can go to our next caller in opposition.
The caller with the last three digits, 496, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller, we see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Can you please check your device to make sure that you aren't muted on your end?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alexandria Dazlich, D-A-Z-L-I-C-H, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Nevada Restaurant Association. We are here today in opposition to AB 283 as it's currently written. A critical component of the restaurant industry is strong food safety practices. With this in mind, the Restaurant Association as well as local health districts are concerned about the health and sanitation consequences this bill would open up. Some restaurants would be placed in the middle of deciding between receiving a fine from the health district versus receiving a fine for not opening their bathroom. By allowing non-employees back of the house access where food is stored, prepared, and cooked, it quickly becomes a sanitation hazard that would have a potential impact on the health of its customers in addition to the safety of restaurant employees. By allowing patrons uninhibited access to areas like back of the house, kitchens, food prep, and storage areas, employees are also now susceptible to potential violence and harm from bad actors who take advantage of this privilege. It is for these reasons that we are here today in opposition to the bill as it is currently written. We look forward to continuing to work with the sponsor going forward and finding a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers in opposition on the line, Broadcast Services?
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Okay. Do we have any callers in neutral on the bill?
To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill, oops, I lost it. Sorry, 283, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you, Broadcast Services. I appreciate that. I think we're all struggling here on this Friday afternoon. At this time, I will turn this back over to Assemblywoman Gorlow for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen. Again, AB 283 is about dignity and making sure that people are able to use the restroom when they have certain medical conditions. I do want to take a moment and thank Mr. Simo and Ms. Campbell for joining us today and sharing stories. And I want to thank everyone who called in opposition. We have reached out to them and we're going to continue working and hopefully we can come to a mutual agreement on some of the language with this bill and reach what our intent is to allow people the dignity of going to the bathroom. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow. And I would also let our committee members know that there are at least 4 people that have submitted written letters in support of Assembly Bill 283. So I encourage you to check on Nellis for those letters of support. And again, I would remind any members of the public that if you do want to comment on either one of the bills that were presented today, you do have within 48 hours to submit written support or letters or documentation on those bills. And I would encourage you to do so. And with that, this time I would close the hearing on Assembly Bill 283. And I would begin public comment. As a reminder to anyone providing public comment, please clearly state and spell your name for the record. We will be limiting testimony to 2 minutes. Staff will be timing each member to ensure that we are giving everyone a fair opportunity to speak. And Broadcast Services, do we have anyone on the line for public comment at this time?
Yes, Chair, let me check. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 303. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Jerry North, GERRINORTH, and I'm submitting testimony in support of a study to determine ways retired state workers who do not qualify for Medicare can access affordable health care and medication. Good morning, Chairman Nguyen and members of the committee. My name is Jerry North. I'm a resident of Assembly District 12. I've been retired from CCSD since 2008 as a full-time teacher and have been a guest teacher from 2010 to 2020. I'm a member of the Nevada State Education Association, retired, and the Clark Retired Education Association. As a retiree on a fixed income, I know how rising healthcare costs are a continuous worry for many Americans. Many Nevada educators and other state workers who are eligible to retire continue to work because they have no access to Medicare, having never paid into Social Security. As you can imagine, having no insurance increases their anxiety and contributes to depression. Many retired educators I've spoken with use smaller doses of maintenance meds, with or without doctor input, to make ends meet. They also put off procedures and surgeries. Workers who dedicate 3 or 4 decades to the great state of Nevada deserve better. Please keep in mind, active and retired state workers need access to affordable health care when they retire. Members of NSEAR appreciate anything you can do to help contain the cost of health care and medicine. We hope you would consider a study to determine the status of state workers and steps that could be taken next session to ensure all Nevada workers have access to affordable health care and medicine in their golden years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your public comment. Do we have any other callers on the line for public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no additional callers at this time.
Wonderful. So at this time, I will close public comment. Do we have any comments from members before we adjourn? Don't see any. So at this time, I will remind everyone our next meeting will be on Monday, March 22nd at 1:30, and the meeting is adjourned. Have a good weekend.